Hi friends, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Chana and this is Jar of Fireflies. Here I make videos all about my life as an Orthodox Jewish homeschooling mother of 3. And today we're going to be baking bread. That's right folks, today we are going to be baking bread. We are going to be baking challah to be specific, and we are going to be baking my gluten challah to be even more specific. All right, now y'all are probably used to my cooking being all gluten-free, so I'm going to explain all of that here in just a second. So if you are looking for a gluten-free challah recipe, I will link to that in the description box below. I have a wonderful gluten-free challah recipe that I have already done on this channel, so I will link to that in the description box below for you. Today, however, I'm going to be doing my very old recipe for regular old gluten challah. Okay, so if you've been watching my channel for a while, you know that one of my children has celiac disease. And so because of that, we had kept our home entirely gluten-free so that everything here would be safe for our child. Okay, but things have changed. There's a few reasons for this change, and this change is incredibly recent, like within the past month. All right, so there's a lot of reasons for this change. One reason is that our child with celiac is now much older and we're not worried about him accidentally eating the wrong thing. Second is the food prices. Food prices are really crazy right now, and gluten-free food is very expensive already to start with. Kosher food is already really expensive to start with. So gluten-free and kosher food, it's just totally crazy. So if we can just go back to some of this regular gluten food, that's just a really big help for us. And then the third of the big reasons why we made this change is that my child with celiac said that it's okay. So, so we're only doing this for challah for Shabbat. So I'm still baking my son his gluten-free challah for Shabbat. I'm just baking this for the rest of the family in addition to that. And as far as the rest of the foods that we eat go, we are still keeping everything else gluten-free, as far as desserts, snacks, anything like that. And the way that my son put it out to us is he's like, as long as I have the same thing in gluten-free, I don't care. So we are okay with that, since everybody is okay with that. So that's saving us a lot of money in the food department, being able to buy some regular bread during the week for sandwiches for the rest of the kids. He still has what he loves, so everybody is happy. But really, it's just bread. It's just like sandwich bread. Okay, so anyways, I wanted to share with you guys today my regular challah recipe. This is the recipe that I've been making since, when did I start making this one? Oh, like right when I got married, pretty much is when I started making this. This is sort of close to my mother-in-law's challah recipe. I thought it was very close, turns out it's totally different. All right, so anyways, let's gather the ingredients and let's get started.
You will need 5 pounds of flour plus a little bit extra, 4 cups of water, 1 cup of sugar, 5 tablespoons of yeast, 2 eggs, 1 tablespoon of salt, and 2 cups of oil. A few supplies you will need is a very large mixing bowl, a 1 cup measuring cup, a tablespoon, a food scale, and a whisk.
All right, now let's get started.
Okay, to start with, add your 5 pounds of flour to your large mixing bowl. Now this bag is a 5-pound bag and it's unopened, so I don't need to measure anything. But if you did need to measure out 5 pounds of flour, that is what your food scale is for. Next, add in 5 tablespoons of yeast. This happens to be fast-acting yeast, but that's not something that I normally pay attention to, so I don't know if it matters. But just so you know, this is fast-acting yeast that I'm using. Next, add your 1 tablespoon of salt and then mix. All right, now we can set those dry ingredients aside, and no, I did not forget the sugar. We will add that later, and we can work on our wet ingredients. So pull over your 4 cups of water and add in 2 cups of oil and your 2 eggs. Now grab your whisk and mix your wet ingredients together. For the oil, I am using olive oil, but really pretty much any oil will work. You could use vegetable oil or canola oil or whatever you have on hand. All right, here's the fun part. Grab your wet ingredients and pour them into your dry ingredients and then start mixing. You could start out this mixing with a spoon. I tend to just go after it with my hands since they're gonna get all in there soon enough anyways. Because I'm using my hands, it's really easy just to pull off some of that flour that sticks on the side and mix that in with the wetter part of the dough that's starting to form here in the bowl. Okay, now that I have mostly dough here in the bowl, I'm gonna go ahead and add that 1 cup of sugar. For whatever reason, when I add the sugar earlier in the process, my dough just turns out way too dense. I have no idea if this is just me or weird luck or if there's actually some food science basis to this, but this is when I add my sugar and that's why. All right, so you can see at this point we have solidly formed a dough here. So I'm just gonna keep kneading this because the more that I knead this dough, the lighter and fluffier my challah turns out. So I'm just grabbing like a part on the edge, kind of pulling it to the middle and then punching it down in there. And then occasionally when that gets too hard, I'll flip my dough over and then continue just with that same process. Just as pretty much as long as my arms can handle it is how long I will knead the dough. And there we go, I am all set. So I'm going to cover this with saran wrap and let that sit so the dough can rise till it's at least about twice the size that it is now.
All right, so now we're just gonna let that sit there for, I don't know, maybe about 30 minutes or so, just until it rises. Kind of will vary depending on the temperature and the humidity and all that jazz, but I'll let you know how long it takes for it to rise enough for me to come back in and mess with it again. Okay, so we are about 50 minutes later, so it took longer than I thought, but I never really timed these things, so my bad. Anyways, it took about 50 minutes for this dough to rise up. So we're at about here right now, so yeah, quite a bit bigger. And something that I forgot to do a few minutes ago was separate my challah. So this is one of those Jewish things that I do. So when we are baking challah, there is a mitzvah, a commandment, to tie the portion of the dough to the Kohens. So the Kohens were the people who served in the temple. They are descendants of Aaron. Now we don't have a temple anymore, so now we just separate a bit of the dough and we burn it. So all that we need to do is after we have kneaded our dough, but before we shape it into loaves, we'll just pull off a little piece, say a bracha, a blessing, and then announce that what you are holding is challah once you have separated that piece off, and then I just burn mine in the oven. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahafrish challah. This is challah.
So after I put my piece of bread onto a piece of foil, I will put it in the oven on broil, and that burns it up real nice and quick for me.
All right, so now it's time to go ahead and knead this challah one more time. So I'm gonna see if I can't give this baby to somebody so I can get to work on that.
All right, so I'm just gonna pull that plastic wrap out of my way and I'm gonna start kneading the dough again. This is my favorite part right there, that first punch in the dough after it's risen. So this is going to get the dough all tight and small again, and then I'm gonna let it sit there and rise one more time. Now, while I'm kneading this, I'm not going to knead it anywhere near as long as I did earlier. However, I could, and again, it would be lighter and fluffier, but as you could hear in the background a second ago, kids, life, etc., I'm doing my best. And anyways, I'm just gonna knead it enough to where it's feeling like smaller and tighter, and then I will cover it and let it rise that second time.
Okay, so I'm gonna let that sit there for probably another 50 minutes. We shall guess, but I will let you know when I come back to it. And at that point, we will shape the challah. Now, if you wanted to, you could totally shape it now. I'd like to let it rise twice because I feel like that just ends up making it fluffier and better, but that's just me. All right, the dough has risen again. It's been about 45 minutes this time. And now I'm gonna knead it one more time and start shaping it so we can bake.
Okay, so I'm going to toss that saran wrap now because I am done with that, and I'm just going to knead this dough back down to where it's like smaller and tighter, and basically it feels like it did before we let it rise for the first time. And again, this doesn't really take very long, and I do this shorter than any of the others. All right, so I'm gonna grab my extra flour now, and I'm gonna put a little bit of that down here on the counter just so that my dough won't stick. All right, I prepared a baking tray with some parchment paper on top, so I'll have somewhere to put my dough here once I have shaped it into loaves. And I almost dove into the challah without putting flour on my hands, but I am putting a little bit of flour on my hands so that the dough doesn't stick all over my hands and my fingers. All right, so I just grabbed kind of a small handful and I'm forming that into a long rope. I'm going to do 3 of these before I braid it together. All right, so to braid my challah, I just put the 3 strands there together. I pinch the top so that they are connected, and then I just start braiding exactly the way you would braid anything else. And then once I get to the bottom, I kind of pinch those ends together again, might tuck a little bit underneath there on both sides, and I try to shape it out so that the loaf will be pretty even. And then there we go, beautiful challah ready to go. And I put it there on the baking tray, and then I'll make 1 more. I like to put 2 on each of my baking trays. So while I'm doing all of the shaping of these different loaves, I can usually get about 8 loaves or so out of this batch of challah dough. They start to rise again while they're sitting on the tray. So this is fantastic because they're getting an extra rise in there that make them nice and fluffy when they get baked. And there is one other step in here that I do. This is a totally optional step, but it will make your challah look prettier, and that is to put an egg wash on top of your braided challah before you put it into the oven. So I do this pretty much as soon as I have braided and put it on the tray, because if you wait and do it right before you put it in the oven after your dough has risen again, brushing the egg wash on there could kind of deflate your challah, and we don't want deflated challah. All right, now that I've seen that first batch that I braided is starting to rise, I'm gonna go ahead and put those into the oven. I have preheated my oven to 350 degrees, and they will bake in there for 30 minutes. And then I'll just pull that tray out when it's done and put the next tray in. And here is what they look like when they are finished. Beautiful, delicious. My kitchen smells amazing. I cannot wait to eat these on Shabbat.
Okay, folks, so that is the gluten challah. I hope that you enjoyed. If you try making this at home, please let me know in the comments below. I would absolutely love to hear how it turned out for you. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. It helps my channel out a lot and lets me know what kind of videos you guys like to see. All right, with that, we're gonna call this video a close. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and I will see you in my next upload. All right.
You know me here.
I didn't know you were gonna make noise.
Yeah.
Oh, this is crooked. Whoa, it's really crooked. It's all crooked. Okay. All right, folks, so that is the gluten-free challah. No, not gluten-free. If you try making this at home, please let me know down in the description box below. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up.